This is the worst season that Florida State football has had in over 50 years. They're on pace to finish with only 2 wins, which the last time Florida State had a season this bad, they went 0-11 in 1973. And I believe that this season has been so bad for Florida State and Mike Norvell that it has set this program back 3-4 years. Because what has caused Florida State to have this bad season is their inability to develop the players that they recruit out of high school. The only good players that Florida State has had that they've recruited out of high school has been Lawrence Toafili, Patrick Payton, and their linebacker, DJ Lundy. Everybody else that's been an impact player for Florida State since Mike Norvell has been hired has come from the transfer portal. Jordan Travis, transfer from Louisville. Keon Coleman, transfer. Johnny Wilson, transfer. Jared Verse, Brandon Fisk, Fentrell Cypress. All of these guys are transfers. All of the players that have made it to the NFL, that have got drafted at the next level, have all come from the portal. So, if you are a high school recruit, why would you want to play for a program that has been unable to develop anybody that they've gotten out of recruiting? And right now, Florida State has lost 5 4-stars in the last 2 months due to decommitments. They right now have the 34th or the 31st ranked recruiting class in America behind Duke, SMU, Georgia Tech, Clemson, in Miami. If Florida State is going to have a 1-year turnaround, you're basically saying that Mike Norvell is going to have to do the same thing that got Florida State into this situation anyway, which is overly relying on the transfer portal. You see, the transfer portal is only good when you have done a good job of recruiting and you mix it in. So therefore, you have a few recruits that are good, but when you got a few positions of needs where some of the guys that you recruited at some positions haven't really panned out, then you go into the portal and you get those portal guys to fill those areas of needs. But the portal is not something to be relied upon to solely build your team off. And that's what Florida State is. They are a portal-heavy team. A lot of their best players, they got from the transfer portal. They're not recruiting. Even Ole Miss, as portal-heavy as what they've been, some of the players they have starting for them, they developed through recruiting. Same thing with Georgia, Alabama, Miami. Some of their players have been developed through recruiting. Xavier Restrepo, one of the best receivers in Miami Hurricanes history, they developed him from recruiting. You know, all of the best teams in college football, they all dip into the transfer portal. But they also do a good job at developing the players that they get out of high school, which is Mike Norvell's biggest flaw. And that's why Florida State is in such a bad situation. You see, what people got wrong about Florida State coming into this season is that they based their expectations for the Seminoles this year solely based off what they did last year. What they overlooked is that this is a program that didn't have a lot of returning production that was really good. Same thing with Missouri. They lost the majority of their defense last year, plus their defensive coordinator. They were hopeful that the guys Florida State brought in via recruiting were good enough that with them getting the start this year and replace those portal guys that left for the NFL from that ACC title team would be good enough to fill the shoes of the guys who left. And it hasn't happened because this coaching staff has done a poor job of developing high school recruits. Why do you think Mark Norvell just cleared house with nearly his entire coaching staff? He fired his OC. He fired his defensive coordinator. This is a program that is once again rebuilding. Mike Norvell, going into 2025, is entering the same situation that he walked into when he first took this FSU head coaching gig back in 2020. You got to rebuild Florida State from the ground up, because with how many misses that you've had via the portal and recruiting, you got to start over again. And it's hard to see Florida State, despite how down the ACC is, bouncing back, going from what they are going to be this year when the season finishes to being a team that all of a sudden is going to be right back in contention for winning the ACC this year. With how bad Florida State's season has gone, it has set this program back several years. And I don't think Mike Norvell is going to be able to recover from this, because it's one thing to have a down year, but it's one thing to go from 13-0, getting snubbed out of the playoffs, getting blown out by Georgia in the Orange Bowl, to being a 2-win program. That shows that you're not a good head coach, and it shows that you're not good at developing talent. Hell, Billy Napier has gotten more out of his freshman and sophomore players than what Florida State has gotten this year out of theirs. Florida State is in a really bad situation, and Florida State's future, I would describe it as a sinking ship, because that's what it is. I don't see how things get any better for Mike Norvell and Florida State with the misses that they've had in the portal and the misses that they've had in recruiting. Mark Norvell has had about 3-4 recruiting cycles now. All of these guys mostly should be on the field making plays, but they aren't. Why do you think we keep seeing a lot of these true freshmen or some of these second-year guys? Because a lot of the guys that Mark Norvell recruited from his first 2 recruiting classes haven't panned out. There's only 4 players that I've named earlier that have worked out that were high school recruits. What Mike Norvell has done at Florida State by over-relying on the transfer portal has hurt this program, because they can't develop high school recruits, so they dabble in the portal and think that they can already find somewhat already made prospects out of the portal that can come in and produce, but they still overlook no matter who you get out of the portal, you still have to develop them. Like Jackson Dart wasn't a finished product. Lane Kiffin developed him. Same thing with Jordan Travis. All of the draft picks Florida State had last year were from the portal. And when you build your program through the portal, you have a hard time building a culture. And I knew Florida State was screwed, because I was talking to a FSU player before the season, right? And I asked him, how did you feel about that loss to Georgia? And I don't really want to detail completely what he told me, but from what he told me, Florida State didn't care about the game. They already knew they were going to get blown out. They already accepted the fact that they had no chance against Georgia with all their starters opting out. So they just opted to have a good time instead of also focusing on the game. And that's why the Orange Bowl was so one-sided. Now, I'm not going to say who told me this, because you're never supposed to reveal your sources. But I am tapped in with a few players that play for Florida State, a few people that are connected to these FSU players, and I've talked to a couple of them. And just off that, from the few guys I talked to when I asked them about spring practice, how they feel about DJU, some of them told me they intentionally were dropping interceptions so they didn't hurt his confidence. And I'm not making this up. I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are also tapped into Florida State, who cover this program, who write about this program, they were hearing similar things, because if you know the same people I know, you will be able to reiterate everything I'm saying. It's factual. So Florida State right now, they're in a bad spot, because your offensive line can't protect anybody. They can't open up holes in the run game, and your defensive line is struggling to get after the quarterback. FSU, these next 2-3 years under Mike Norvell, I feel are going to be rebuilding years, and I don't see this being a one-off season when they bounce back instantly next year. They could be down for a while. They may not be a 1 or 2 win team next season. They probably could get back to bowl eligibility, but I don't see Florida State being a contender for the ACC title or the college football playoffs for at least the next couple of years, with how bad this season has been, how bad they've recruited and developed talent out of high school, and how overly dependent they've been on the transfer portal.